What is up, everyone? My name is Jerichoholic8704, and I have to say, amidst the coronavirus pandemic, wrestling itself has been on, not the decline, but it's just kind of been the pits, you know what I mean? Look, I will say things have been turning around as of late. I've been enjoying AEW and NXT a little bit more than I usually do. SmackDown's been hit or miss, and Raw is typically just a miss regardless. That being said, AEW has been solid, and the New Japan G1 Climax is coming up, and that is always awesome. So I'm very optimistic. But I wanted to talk about a certain topic today, and it has to do with All Elite Wrestling. And I want to preface this by saying that I am by no means an AEW hater, and I don't want to say I'm a furious defender of All Elite Wrestling either. I have my issues, and I have my pros and cons with the company. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very much a neutral fan of All Elite Wrestling. But the topic at hand has to do with former WWE talent coming to All Elite Wrestling. And we've seen this kind of come to a head with Miro, FKA Rusev, jumping ship and coming to AEW. I shouldn't say jumping ship because he was already released from his contract, so he kind of just hopped on a new ship as opposed to like really kind of, betraying anyone. But, 'tis neither here nor there. Anyway, Rusev shows up in AEW this past Wednesday, and Twitter kind of blew up a little bit. People were excited. I mean, it was cool. I liked seeing him. I like Rusev. I heard he's got New Japan dates, which honestly I'm more excited about that honestly than his AEW gig, but whatever. Happy for the guy. He's got another job. That's more than a lot of people can say during this pandemic. But it got a lot of people talking about like, wow, does WWE have does AEW have too many former WWE guys? And, I started thinking about it, and it's like, I can just start firing off names right here and now of guys who, established themselves in WWE and went to AEW or started AEW. I mean, Cody Rhodes, Goldust, Shawn Spears, Jon Moxley, Luke Harper, Brody Lee, Jack Swagger, Rusev. Like, I just list a bunch of guys who have been to WWE and are now a part of AEW. And I think part of this, it's a two-way street because I'm going to defend it and I'm going to attack it just a little bit. But the attack really doesn't have anything to do with why AEW brought them in, because in my opinion, it's not a bad thing at all. And, people have made comparisons to WCW, and I don't know if it's kind of weird comparing AEW to WCW Nitro and the idea that like all these former WCW guys came over from WWE and like they stole talent, yada yada. But like you look at where WCW ended up and what their biggest problem a lot of the time was the fact that they brought in so many old guys and they didn't create anyone new. And I don't think that's the issue with AEW. And I think it's not necessarily a false comparison, but it's not a genuinely honest one at that, because WWE and WCW, when WCW took those guys, they took Hogan, Savage, Piper. They were taking a lot of big main event stars from WWE who were kind of nearing the end of their prime and were kind of riding off their success to the end of their career in WCW. You can throw Nash and Hall into that category too, but to a lesser extent. With AEW, it's kind of different. Like the only person that kind of really applies to is Goldust and Jericho, I think, are the only guys who kind of have hit their peak, and but two varying roles. I mean, Jericho was the first champion. He's still a main event player, and he's kind of used as like that, I don't want to say utility veteran, but he's almost like a mentor almost for up and coming main eventers. And he's a draw, and he was kind of their main draw, honestly. He's probably the most famous wrestler they have in terms of longevity. It's different just saying like, oh, WCW took all these former WWE names and that's the same thing. It's really not. Shawn Spears, Jon Moxley, Luke Harper, and I know I'm flip-flopping with AEW and WWE names, but you guys know who I'm talking about. Jack Swagger, those guys had varying degrees of success. Jon Moxley was probably the guy who had the most success in WWE besides Chris Jericho that came to AEW. But someone like Shawn Spears was barely promoted on the main roster. He was mainly an NXT guy. It's like, that's not a fair comparison to say he was someone like a Savage or a Piper that went to WCW. That's not the case at all. It's establishing a new run for him because he really didn't have anything in WWE. And that, I think, is the main issue here. How many times have we always said that WWE has too many guys under contract? They can only do so much. I mean, they have like 5 fucking hours of TV and plus the extra 2 if you count NXT, and it's like, how many guys can they really feature? And it's like, I don't want them to feature that many guys. I would rather them have, compact rosters. I don't mind necessarily The only thing that sucks when people get released is that they lost their job. And I just hope that they can recover from that. And especially during this time, it really sucks when you lose your job. I should know that very well. But all I'm saying is, like, I don't necessarily mind when WWE cuts the fat, because there are too many people under contract in WWE. And that's why I thought it was so great that AEW got this limelight, because it's like, wow, there's an alternative. And it's not like you have to go to WWE to make a living for yourself. You can go to All Elite Wrestling, ROH, New Japan, TNA. You can do all these different things. And isn't that what you want? I mean, what do you want these guys to do when WWE cuts them? Do you want them to just go back, like, mowing lawns? Like, what the fuck do you want them to do? They're going to find work somewhere else. You can't really blame them for signing. And when you have AEW, which is this new up-and-coming company that's, has a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of buzz, that's not necessarily true, but, is popular among core wrestling fans. They've got a lot of money flowing into the company because, the owner is, an heir to a billionaire. You know what I mean? Like, he's got a ton of money to throw around, clearly, because they're signing all these people left and right in the midst of a pandemic. I mean, Jesus Christ, how much money do you have? I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but still, it's like, what do you want these guys to do? There's really no alternative but to find work somewhere else. I mean, like, just because they're not going to be in WWE does not mean they can't wrestle. I just think that is something that people are just really it's kind of like flying over people's heads. I mean, I don't think AEW has tried to make it their mission to just become the WWE shelter. It's just those guys find an alternative in AEW. The Revival, that's another one. I'm just trying to think of more people. It's just like, obviously there's a lot of people, and they are heavily featured. I get it. I get that, like, some former WWE names are featured a lot on AEW television. But again, it's like, these people still have worth. They still have merit. And for all intents and purposes, when those people were being wasted away in WWE or underutilized or whatever the fuck term you want to use, I guarantee you people were claiming, like, oh, can't they just go somewhere else, and can't, like, another company would totally recognize their talent? Well, now another company is recognizing their talent. So what the fuck do you want? Now, all that said, I have to kind of, pedal back a little bit and say that I understand why. I understand why people are upset, and I get upset about it too. And it's not because these wrestlers sign with AEW. It's because they go on AEW television and they just bitch and moan about World Wrestling Entertainment. And that's the reason. That's why you see all this negative pushback for signing these former WWE talents. It's not because people don't want to see them. It's because people are sick of hearing their bitching and moaning. Look, I understand Rusev was underutilized. We all thought that. I understand that, Wrestler X and Wrestler Y and Wrestler Z, they were underutilized. They thought they didn't get a fair shot. Like, honestly, it just comes across as bitching, moaning, you can't get over your ex. Like, it's just that kind of shit. And no one, I repeat, no one wants to hear that, okay? And quite honestly, this has been the narrative of AEW for the longest time. They market themselves as like, oh, we're the alternative, we're the hip new cool company. But there's so many fucking pot shots, and I understand that WWE, oh, they took some shots at AEW. It's a war! It's not a fucking war. Go sit down and just watch the fucking show. And I think that is why people, I guess people don't really remember, because I shouldn't even look down upon people, because, I was fucking barely alive during the Monday Night Wars. So it's like, the idea of, jumping ship was something really innovative and really crazy and really cool. Now it's like, it's kind of lost a lot of its luster. And no one, people are excited to see these guys wrestle different people and different companies under different names. But no one wants to hear about how you were unfairly slighted by World Wrestling Entertainment and they didn't recognize your talent. You can take the brass ring and shove it up your ass. Like, I was so excited to see Miro until he said that. And I was like, fuck you, dude. I'm done. Like, I'm done with that shit. It's so annoying. And, like, this even goes back to Cody fucking, like, sledgehammering the throne. And it's just like, dude, get the fuck over it. And it's like, you hear people all the time saying, like, oh, just, like, put more effort into your show and your matches. And it's like, oh, no, it's got to be a war. Like, I feel like the fans are really fueling the fire here, where it's like, oh, these companies have to clash one-on-one, because it's a war. It's not a war. Fuck off, all right? We all know it's not a war. It's just the idea that, like, these guys have to come in and bitch and moan and complain, and that will turn anyone off, no matter what you're complaining about. And again, it's one of those things where it's just like, everyone understands that we wanted to see you in more of a limelight. So again, like, it's a two-way street. You got to be smart about it. I don't mind them bringing all these old guys, I shouldn't say old guys, these old WWE guys in, because, I want to see them, because they still have more to offer. And I think maybe under a different, leadership and different, storylines and different booking, they could shine more than they did in World Wrestling Entertainment. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with one company using another wrestler better than another company would. All right, that's just a fact. All right, like that's gonna happen. But the idea that you have to take it out on every other company, like, fuck off. Like, it's not a war. And the other thing is, AEW has kind of pushed themselves as the underdog in this scenario, which I don't buy either, because it's like you're backed by someone who has just as much money as the McMahons. You know what I mean? It's just like, you're not like starting from nothing. You had so much fucking money to play around with. It's unbelievable. Matt Hardy, there's another one. All these names are jumping to me the more I think about it. But Matt Hardy, I think, was a great addition to AEW because WWE kind of kneecapped his creativity with the Broken character. And I think Matt Hardy would thrive, especially that character, would thrive in a situation where he has a little bit more creative control and WWE isn't trying to shove all their ideas. And I know they gave him some creative liberty with the Woken character, but, you know, you could tell that it was kind of restricted and it was a WWE clean version of it, as opposed to the more raw version that Matt Hardy is used to creating when he was in TNA. So I just think some guys would thrive under this AEW roof, and I think there's no problem with them doing what is best for their careers. It's just when you fucking tell me about it, that's when I'm done. All right? So hopefully that clears up some light. I mean, I don't know. Like, again, I don't hate it, but god damn it, do I find it annoying when they can't stop bitching. But that's going to be it for me. My name is Jerichoholic8704. I'll see all of you guys later.